What's up, guys? Welcome back to Funny MMA. Today I'm going to be giving my predictions on Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson in the main event of UFC 223. Alright, so literally the day after I filmed the predictions, Tony Ferguson pulls out of the fight with a knee injury. So that kind of fucks up the whole video I just did because I've already laid out the fights. So today I'm going to be giving my predictions on the entire main card, the 5 fights on UFC 223 this Saturday. This card is actually pretty fucking stacked. There's a lot of really good fights on it. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the 5 fights on the main card. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up to the top, saving the best for last. So first of all, we have Iaquinta versus Paul Felder, Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis, Renato Moicano versus Calvin Kattar, and then in the co-main, we have a title fight, a rematch between Rose Namajunas versus Johanna fucking whatever, I can't pronounce her last name. The main event has been switched to Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Max Holloway. The same belts, the interim lightweight title is still on the line, but Tony Ferguson has been replaced by Max Holloway. So first things first, we got Paul Felder versus Iaquinta. Now, Paul Felder is on a 3-fight knockout streak. The last time he lost was to Francisco Trinaldo, and it was a doctor stoppage. This guy's really talented. He's extremely tough. He has great cardio, great takedown defense, and he's primarily a striker. He has nasty strikes, and one of his best weapons he's been using a lot is elbows. He actually has a couple dirty spinning elbow knockouts as well. He's going up against Iaquinta. Now, Iaquinta is a veteran of the UFC. He was on The Ultimate Fighter, and for a long time he hadn't fought. He was quite inactive, but he came back and fought Diego Sanchez, knocked him out in the first round. Problem is, a lot of people consider Diego Sanchez to be way past his prime and washed up at this point, so that win doesn't really hold that much as it would have 2 or 3 years ago. Besides that, though, he's trained a lot in the last couple months, and it looks like he's going to finally make a return to the UFC. So obviously, Iaquinta has great boxing, great striking, great cardio. He's just a really well-rounded fighter. This is an interesting fight because both Paul Felder and Iaquinta are both very similar. They both have a little bit of a wrestling foundation, but they primarily keep their fight on the feet. They have great cardio, they have decent power, but they really like to brawl. They like to trade and exchange inside the pocket. I'd say Iaquinta has a slightly higher fight IQ, but besides that, this fight's really even. It's going to be very interesting. My prediction, I think it's going to be a 3-round decision for Paul Felder. I think he's going to edge it out. This could be fight of the night. I just think the difference is going to be that he's been more active lately. So Felder, 3rd-round decision. Moving up, we got Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. This is actually an absolute brawl of a fight. So Michael Chiesa has been in some absolute wars, so has Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis has not looked very great since USADA, since new weight-cutting regulations. He just looks like a different fighter. He hasn't been able to get a win streak going, and everybody he's beat has been fringe top 10. Now, he's still very dangerous. He has great kicks. He has great defensive takedowns, too, and scrambles. He's also very hard to submit. Michael Chiesa is a grappler. He's very tough, so what he lacks in striking technique, he makes up for with heart and endurance. But his game plan here is going to try and get Pettis to the ground, try and choke him out. Pretty simple. Now, Pettis has really good takedown defense, but one of the holes in his game appears to be his cardio. So I could see this being a very fast-paced first round, Pettis being very loose on the feet. Chiesa is going to be eating a lot of shots right off the bat, but as the fight progresses, Pettis is going to slow down a little bit. Chiesa is going to be able to close the distance, put him up against the cage, clinch, try to dirty box, and beat him up from the inside, brawl with him. Basically close in on Pettis' distance. Chiesa gets better as the fight goes on, whereas Pettis slows down. So I could easily see the first round going to Pettis, the second round being even, and then Chiesa just coming on strong in the 3rd round, where Pettis starts to gas. And that would be much more likely for him to get a takedown and then work towards a submission, as it would be early in the fight. My prediction for this fight, I genuinely hate saying this because I'm a big Pettis fan, but I think that Pettis is done at the highest level of MMA, and I think Michael Chiesa is going to win this fight, possibly by a finish. And if he does finish it, it'll be a choke, probably rear naked choke. Honestly, though, now that I think about it, though, this fight could go either way, because Michael Chiesa is one of the easier fights Anthony Pettis has had over the last couple of years. This one's really close, I think. Even though 30 seconds ago I was picking Chiesa by decision, I think I'm going to switch that, Anthony Pettis by decision. Okay, next fight we got Renato Moicano versus Calvin Kattar. Now, I don't know much about Calvin Kattar, but I do know a lot about Renato Moicano, and he was the guy that went to the decision with Jeremy Stephens, and basically it was a really frustrating fight for Stephens fans because the entire fight, Stephens was trying to close the distance and throw him haymakers. and Moicano was just outboxing him, outkicking him. It was just a masterful performance by him. He also fought Brian Ortega, and he, in my opinion, was winning the fight. He was outstriking Ortega, making Ortega look slow, making Ortega eat a lot of punches. It was just a really masterful performance. It actually reminded me a lot of Thiago Alves versus Martin Kampmann, especially the way this fight ended, because one fighter was winning in, I wouldn't say dominating fashion, but they were clearly outstriking them and outpointing them. And then all of a sudden, Brian Ortega, out of nowhere, pulled a guillotine and submitted him. Basically the same thing that happened with Kampmann versus Alves. The difference was Alves dove into the guillotine, whereas Brian Ortega literally just made the guillotine happen out of nowhere. He just pulled it out. It's pretty fucking crazy. Anyways, Moicano is an absolute beast of a striker. He's very technical. He's very fast. He's very precise. He doesn't have the most power, but he's a very smart fighter. He's going to be able to stuff the takedown and just outstrike Calvin Kattar. Moicano has never knocked out a single fighter in his entire career. All of his wins are by decision, with a couple by submission. So it would be unlikely that he knocks out Calvin Kattar, but it is possible. Renato Moicano, 3-round decision. All right, now we have the co-main event, Rose Namajunas versus Johanna. This one's very hard to call. One of two things could happen. One, we find out that, as it turns out, Rose is the kryptonite to Johanna's style because she was easily able to tag her in the last fight. Tagged her multiple times, dropped her, and just finished it. Made it look really easy. And it was really crazy to see because I literally gave Rose next to no chance to win. I truly thought Johanna was on another level than her, and it would just be an easy stick and run, jab and jab and jab and jab, kick, 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 circle, circle, 5-round decision for Johanna. Meanwhile, Rose was able to close the distance and just land some nasty, nasty hooks on her. The strike that ended the fight was absolutely nasty too. A lot of that's because she trains with Pat Barry. For those that don't know, Pat Barry is an absolute beast of a kickboxer, and he used to be a really exciting fighter in the UFC. We never really got to see anything on the ground for that fight, and I think this rematch is going to go the same way. It's going to be a stand-up fight, especially because Johanna has a point to prove that the last fight was a fluke and it won't happen again. So if the last fight was a fluke, I expect easily this fight to go 5 rounds and just be an onslaught by Johanna, where she just pours on huge volume of strikes, kicks, punches, elbows. She never gets tagged clean. She's always pushing the pace, but also not overextending herself and just outpointing Rose. Johanna has the cardio, the striking, the technique, the takedown defense. She has everything that she needs to win. The thing is, Rose was able to close the distance and land on her, crack her chin. And it looks like Rose is the one that actually has the finishing power in this fight. That's one of the big differences here. Rose is tougher and has fight-ending power. Johanna has shown to be droppable and does not necessarily win fights with knockouts. She wins by volume of strikes, technique, and basically just outlasting the fighter, making them quit. Like I said, this one's very tough to call. This one could be a 50-50. The way that the last one ended, though, it was so dominant by Rose, it almost makes it seem like it could have been a fluke. But on this one, I'm going to go by Chael Sonnen saying, he says, when two fighters fight, and one of them is younger, and he beats the older one in dominating fashion, when they rematch, 99% of the time, the younger fighter that won the first time wins the next time, just in even more dominating fashion. So I think that Rose is going to be able to win this fight, but it's going to be a little bit closer. I think Johanna's going to put up a bit more of a fight, but I still think Rose is going to edge this one. Rose is good, but in my opinion, Johanna's personality is such a draw. Rose is pretty bland. I mean, she's just not that interesting. Whereas Johanna, even though it backfired on her, she talks a lot of shit, and she's really fun to watch. So this fight's going to be 50-50. Gun to the head, I'm going to say Rose Namajunas is going to get this one. So Max Holloway is the current champion at the weight class below, 145, and he's considered one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. The problem is he's stepping up on 7 days' notice, and he's a weight class lower. So he's at a severe size disadvantage, as well as lacks the preparation that Tony Ferguson had. So this is going to be a pretty quick prediction for this fight because, frankly, I see it being an absolute one-sided domination by Khabib. Max Holloway is similar to Tony Ferguson in many ways. He's very well-rounded. He's tall and lanky and has great reach for the division he's in. He has great defensive wrestling. He has very sneaky but slick submissions. He's also known to have unorthodox striking. His boxing is incredibly clean and precise, and there's a lot of technique despite his tendency to try and get fighters to brawl with him. Amongst all those things, he's still a smaller, weaker version of Tony Ferguson. He's used to fighting guys at 145. He's used to having a size advantage. And he's not used to facing wrestlers because there's not many wrestlers at 145. Meanwhile, Khabib is just an absolute monster. He's arguably the best wrestler in the UFC. He's used to taking down guys that are much higher weights than 155 pounds, let alone 145. Khabib is going to come out there and absolutely decimate Max Holloway. It's not even going to be close. It's going to be like a worse version of the Edson Barboza fight. Now, I gave Tony Ferguson a chance, so I will give Max Holloway a small chance as well. But realistically, his best bet to win this fight is to pace himself and try and nullify all the damage that Khabib is going to inflict on him in the early rounds and somehow manage to survive to the 4th and 5th rounds. In the 4th and 5th rounds, I see Khabib slowing down a little bit, and that would be Max Holloway's advantage to capitalize and using his endurance, cardio, and heart, try and knock out or at least outstrike Khabib in dominating fashion in the last 2 rounds. This would secure him and at the very minimum a draw or a late finish. However, I see Khabib coming out there and just demolishing him. He's going to have no trouble at all taking him down. And to be fair, Tony Ferguson would have been taken down the same way. I just don't see Max Holloway being able to take the same damage that Tony did. Tony would have been able to put up a little bit more resistance because he's fought wrestlers before, he's fought bigger guys before, and he is a big 155er. But Max Holloway's just outsized, he's underprepared. I'm not sure what kind of fight shape he was in for this fight. He's basically showing up, taking a chance, and I respect him for it, but this is a very, very dangerous fight for him. I'd say it's like a 95% chance Khabib beats him. And on top of that, I believe Khabib is going to beat him with ground and pound in the first 2 rounds. It's going to be an onslaught of punches and elbows, and Max is just going to be overwhelmed. Don't take anything away from Max. He's young, and he still has a chance, but I think this is going to be an absolute one-sided beatdown by Khabib. It's quite unfortunate that the Tony Ferguson fight still hasn't happened. This is literally the 4th time that the fight was supposed to be scheduled, and it came off. So the good thing is we have a really good replacement in Max Holloway. He's actually very similar to Tony Ferguson. He's younger too, so that would be the one thing he has over Tony is youth. But realistically, he does not stand more than a 5 or 10% chance. I would love if anybody here could contradict my prediction completely and say maybe come up with a theory or outline that Max Holloway could use to win this fight. I just don't see it happening. Max is all about keeping the distance, outstriking guys, and basically using his range and takedown defense to make it his fight. Khabib is going to completely smash through that. He's going to run right at Holloway. He's not going to be afraid of Holloway's power. He's not going to be afraid of Holloway threatening a submission or takedown like he would Tony. He's not going to worry about unorthodox stuff. He's just going to run him down, throw him down, and hold him there and beat him up. Be sure to comment below what you think, but I think we all know what's going to happen with this fight. If for whatever reason Holloway manages to win, holy shit, because then he would become the champ. He'd be the 145 and the 155. Then Conor, who ironically said he's ready to step in, but when it came time to replace Tony the week before the fight, he was unavailable. Now some say this is because of the weight cut, but whatever it is, Conor's going to be ringside and he's going to challenge the winner of this fight. So it would be the champ versus the champ if Holloway won. Realistically though, Khabib's going to win, and I think Conor's still going to find a reason not to fight him. Let me know what you guys think about the fights. Let me know your predictions, who you want to win, who you think's going to win, what round, by decision, by submission, by knockout. Post it all below. We'll see who's closest, and yeah, go get fucked. Also, Funny MMA. Boys, I have so many awesome videos I'm going to start putting out. Basically, I'm just wrapping up a couple other projects I'm working on right now. Towards the middle of April, I'm going to start uploading a lot more MMA meme videos, a lot more MMA funny videos, a lot more trash talk compilations, all the good stuff that I know you guys are sticking around for. So just hold tight. It's coming. It's coming.